Battle Beyond the Stars ranks at the top of the list for films that tried to capitalize on the Star Wars craze. It was made by Roger Corman, and if you don't know, he's an exploitation producer. Essentially, he would make cheap knockoffs to whatever the most recent blockbuster was, and this movie was undoubtedly a cash-in on Star Wars. On this film, Roger Corman supposedly wasn't on the set that much, but when he would come in, he'd grab the script from somebody, tear a bunch of pages out, and fire a few people. That was his method for keeping the budget under control. The movie industry knew that people were eager for more sci-fi space operas following in the wake of Star Wars, and they didn't really care if their version was bad. Even if it brought in quarter the success of Star Wars, it'd be worth it. Now, while they didn't have nearly as big a budget as Star Wars, they did manage to turn crap into mediocrity thanks to a talented crew. One example being ship variety. You'll notice that each of the ships has a unique design to them. James Cameron served as a model maker and director here, and this was before he became famous for directing big-budget Hollywood blockbusters. He designed many of the spacecrafts, and as an example of trying to keep it low budget, built corridors out of spray-painted McDonald's containers. From Battle Beyond the Stars to Avatar. Well, you gotta start somewhere. So what does it rip off from Star Wars? Well, the opening shot is of a huge ship shown from behind. It uses white transitions, which look very similar to the way Star Wars uses transitions. And this might be stretching it a bit, but I'm sorry. What does this door sound like to you? But anyway, here's the basic premise of Battle Beyond the Stars. There's a planet named Akir, and it's threatened by a terrifying invader named Sador.
I am Sador of the Mount Mori.
That's played by John Saxon. You probably know him as the dad in the Nightmare on Elm Street series. I'm not sure exactly why Sador wants to kill all these innocent people. He has no motivation to kill anybody. The filmmakers just want you to accept that he's a bad guy and to care about him without bothering to give you any character development. And also, his arm is in a sling the whole movie, for no real reason. They didn't seem to put much thought into his character. How about at least saying that one of the people of Akira shot him in the arm or something? That'd at least give him some kind of motivation, like how Captain Ahab went after Moby Dick for biting off his leg. But nah, they didn't even bother. So Sador has this thing called the Stellar Converter. It's supposed to turn a normal planet into a sun. It's kind of like this movie's version of the Death Star. The people of Akir obviously don't want that to happen, but they're a peaceful race, so they have to look for outside help. So they send out a volunteer named Shad to go look for some mercenaries. Shad's played by Richard Thomas, who was famous for playing John Boy on the Waltons back in the 70s. Not that anybody really remembers that anymore. And he's pretty much this movie's Luke Skywalker. He's given a ship named Nell that's equipped with a woman's voice.
Showing my backside to those mutant sons of bitches.
You ever notice how in movies pilots always refer to their ships as she?
She's fast enough for you, old man.
Well, this movie takes it more literally.
I think she trusts me.
The outside of the ship looks like a female's body with a pair of breasts. I kid you not. Star Trek had the USS Enterprise, and Battle Beyond the Stars has the USS Funbags.
Now I know why it's called She.
Speaking of Star Trek, as Shad travels through space, he encounters a space station, and the whole scene is very similar to when the Enterprise travels through V'ger in Star Trek The Motion Picture. It's really slow-moving and even has the same sort of background sound effects. So yeah, people usually compare this movie to Star Wars, but it's also got a lot of similarities to Star Trek as well. James Horner worked as the film's composer, which isn't a surprise, as much of the music is similar to that heard in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Once inside the space station, Shad meets a girl who lives with a bunch of androids. Now, she's been raised on a space station in deep space her whole life, surrounded by nobody but robots. This means she's horny as hell. Must be Shad's lucky day.
Does your species have kissing?
Oh, yes. We have that.
Does your species also have rim jobs? The robots don't prove to be of much help, so Shad insists that he has to leave. The rest of the movie is mostly about Shad trying to assemble a force to defeat Sador. First, Shad meets Cowboy.
Move it! Kick ass, boys! Kick ass!
He doesn't think they have much of a chance to beat the bad guys.
You fight Sador, and you've got a snowball's chance in hell.
Aw, poor Snowball. But Cowboy does have an awesome belt that dispenses soda and scotch. If they would have sold those before the movie, I bet people would have liked it more. Except sometimes it looks like he's pissing into a glass. Maybe it's not the best idea after all. Next, Shad meets this lizard guy named Cayman. He runs around the universe with two creatures called Kelvins that communicate with heat waves. Well, I bet they make for some hot conversation. Kanan's ship kind of looks like the ship in Galaxy Quest, doesn't it? Maybe it was a tribute. Then Shad meets this group of aliens called Nestor. They have one consciousness and they act as a group. They have white faces with an eye in the middle of their forehead. And is that actually supposed to be a third eye, or is it just supposed to be paint on their head? Because it looks nothing like their other two eyes. It looks even worse than the third eye the guy has in that Twilight Zone episode, Will the Real Martian Please Stand Up? And I can't even tell you much else about them other than they drink blue toilet water.
You're just nasty.
And then there's Saint X-Men of the Valkyries. Who needs the Force when your movie screen is filled with giant tits? The director knew just where to place the camera, didn't he? This character is there for sex appeal and for no other reason.
You know, sex.
Star Wars never had to stoop to such shameless sexual puns to get a reaction.
You've never seen a Valkyrie go down.
Jeez. Many have also compared this movie to The Magnificent Seven. That's another film where some gunmen are hired to protect a small farming village from bandits. Hell, both movies have Robert Vaughn playing a rundown mercenary. Honestly though, the best reason to watch this movie is for Shad's spaceship. You just can't beat a ship that's got a pair of tits. Maybe this movie would have been more well received if they just called it The Magnificent Two. Overall, it's just a silly space opera with bad acting, poor plot, and cheesy special effects. But if you want to turn your brain off for a few hours, it can be enjoyed as a mindless popcorn flick. So if you're bored someday, check it out.